right, we are going to move on to indicator 10. So we're actually kind of doing the reverse of indicator 9. So in indicator 10, we are actually going to be creating graphs. And so I just want to ask you guys something. When it says, what does it mean if something is walking at a constant rate, jogging at a constant rate, or running? What does that mean? So whenever you are talking about something at a constant rate, sorry, I always write at an angle, and so that's hard for me. So whenever you're going at a constant rate, that is the same speed. And so on a graph, that means it's a straight line. Now, how are these shown on a graph? Walking would be you're increasing, but not very fast, so it's not flat. Jogging at a constant rate would be a little steeper, and then running would be the steepest line. And then obviously, if you're a flat line, that means that you are resting. So we had an example like that in indicator 9. So on this part, for question 2, we're deciphering from this graph which part is the running part. That's definitely D because it's the steepest. Slope means rate. All right, and then the walking part would be the slowest change, which would be example A. And then the resting part is C because there's no change in distance. And this is it's the slowest increase. That explains the walking. Resting is no change. And then the B is jogging. So you would say steeper than walking, but it's not as steep as running. So it gives you a little bit of difference between those, and we had one like that in indicator 9. Is just a quick review. So we are actually going to create our own graph for number 3. So it says a jogger is going on a run. Now when you go on a run, you don't just start running and then run at the same rate all the way. Sometimes runners get tired, they take breaks, they do sprints, they do intervals, sometimes they jog fast, sometimes they take a walking break. Just depends on the type of runner you are. So no one's graphs are going to be identical, but if we look at this, it's telling us that a jogger is going to run a constant rate for 10 minutes. And so that's the first thing we have to ask ourselves. How far do you think a jogger could run in 10 minutes? Now, I am not a good runner, but I would say if you're a decent runner, maybe like a mile in 10 minutes, a 10-minute mile. So for the first 10 minutes, let's just say, so we start at 0 miles, and let's say that first 10 minutes we run a mile. So 1 mile in 10 minutes gives me that little line segment there. All right, then we're going to rest for 5 minutes. So whenever we are resting, we're going to stay a mile in our journey, but it's only for 5 minutes. So from 10 to 15, it's just going to be our rest. So that's our second line segment. And then the last part, we are running at a constant rate for 15 more minutes. So for 15 minutes, again, it doesn't have to be the same speed. Now, it just says a constant rate. Now, if we had said the same rate, we would have to figure out, okay, so, a mile in a minute, so, or 10 miles, or 1 mile in 10 minutes, so 15 minutes would be a mile and a half. But let's just say in 15 minutes, so that's going all the way over to 30, at least 2.5, maybe not as long, maybe in between 2.5 and 3. We want it to be this around the same steepness as running, but it doesn't tell us what the rate is. So this one it didn't specify. Now if it's the same rate, you have to make sure it has the same slope as the previous running, but since it didn't give us a rate, we can just assume that it's relatively close. Now this next one, we are doing another distance in miles. This one we're walking to a friend's house. All right, now this one just says distance. It doesn't say distance from home or distance to, it's just distance traveled. So on this one it says the student starts from home and walks at a constant rate for 15 minutes. So we just have to decide what's an appropriate amount of distance to walk in 15 minutes. Maybe half a mile. So at 15 minutes I go half a mile, start at 0. Because we're walking, we're not running. Alright, then it says once the student reaches his friend's house, he stays and plays video games for 20 minutes. Doesn't seem like a lot, but let's count. 5, 10, 15, 20. We're at the friend's house, we're not moving, our distance isn't changing. Alright, and then the last part it says the student then returns home by walking at a constant rate for 15 minutes. Now on this one, does this say distance from home? It does not, it just says distance. So the amount that he is walking is still going to increase, and I'll explain that in just a second a little better. But for 15 minutes, so 5, 10, 15, how far do we want to walk? Maybe another, well, let's just say he takes his time. Another half a mile. Something like this. Now, the reason why we do this, if you want to think of walking, think about like a Fitbit or any sort of pedometer that counts like your steps per day. So a pedometer calculates your steps, which kind of corresponds to a distance traveled. So like this, you're saying your steps are increasing, but then when you're playing video games, your steps aren't moving. But when you're walking, your steps are going to increase. The amount of walking per day is going to increase. Now, if this had said, let me get out a different colored pen. All right, so let's just say it said distance from home. If it had said distance from home, we would have sent this back this way. But since it just said total distance, we increased. Now, if it said distance from home, we would have sent that graph right back to home. So you guys will be creating your own graphs. We're going to do a little bit more review tomorrow and do some more practice together. If you have questions about anything, just email me because I do have some more examples that I could pull up. If you guys would like to do a Google Meet, and I can, I'm using a camera that's connected right to my laptop, so I could do a screen share with you guys and have you guys just look at things and we could create some stuff together. So if you would like to do that, just reach out to me and I can send you a link. Have a great day.